As Aliyev's forces continue their aggressive actions against Armenia, the head of the Armenian Church, Karekin II, invited the former presidents of the country to gather in Ejmiadzin, including Levon Ter-Petrossian, Kocharyan and Serzh Sargsyan. To discuss this and more, I'm joined by CivilNet host and analyst Eric Hacopian. So Eric, thanks again for your time.
It's a pleasure.
So, this is not the first time they have all met in this way, Ter-Petrossian, Kocharyan and Sargsyan. But what did you think when you heard that the former leaders of the country and the head of the Armenian Church were gathering in this way?
Well, I think any effort to create unity or to do away with extreme partisanship that we have in this country is, should be commended. However, that's a very limited thing. If these gentlemen were meeting about strengthening the country's military and how do we buy weapons, bring weapons, build weapons, and upgrade the country's ability to defend itself, then this meeting is worth it. Otherwise, it isn't. Almost any meeting, political meeting in Armenia at this point that is not involved in does not involve strengthening the country's defenses is a waste of time. So I'm not particularly sure how useful this thing is, to be honest. I would give them credit for trying, but I don't think it's going to produce anything.
And Ter-Petrossian went on to give a highly publicized interview on Hamek, Channel 1 in Armenia. He warned during the interview that difficult and painful solutions await us. Agreements should be signed with both Azerbaijan and Turkey. It will not be to anyone's taste, but there comes a moment where there is no alternative. So Ter-Petrossian has a reputation, whether correct or not, as the kind of I told you so guy, but others say that his legacy is far more complicated and some major mistakes were made during his tenure. What did you think of Ter-Petrossian's forewarning?
I think, frankly, we should stop listening to him. His interview only proved one thing, that there's this notion that age and wisdom are married together is not always the case. He has been reduced to a guy who wants to prove to the world that he was right in 1997 and everyone else was wrong. So I think, unfortunately, that colors all of his judgment. And let's think through the logic of what he's saying. If you think through the logic of what he's saying, is that Armenia should become a Finland-like state controlled by Azerbaijan. That's what he's saying. Is that essentially surrender, give in on all the points, understand our limitations, and go on living as that. Now, what a miserable vision that is. There's nothing in his talk, for example, about how do you mobilize the resources of the country, of which we have done probably no more than 15–20% of, in defending this country and strengthening it, using the diaspora. Most importantly, talking about what is looking like a pivot to the West that's coming in our direction, the potential of the country, the potential of the young people in this country, and the many other moving parts. He lives in this static world where he doesn't see the possibilities that the things that we can do on our own to strengthen ourselves way beyond what we have done right now. So what he has, unfortunately, is this petty, miserable vision that is designed to prove his lifelong goal that, somehow he was right in 1997, everyone else is wrong. Frankly, at this point, for our purposes, he would be a poet if he didn't speak. The less we pay attention to him, the better.
And Kocharyan went on to make a 2-hour press conference afterwards. He stated that he agreed with Ter-Petrossian that the situation in the country is very grave, but added that the two former presidents had drawn different conclusions. He stated, "I believe that everything is so difficult that you need to accept the lesser of the evils," as in to say Ter-Petrossian was thinking that, "and I think that everything is so difficult that you need to unite all your forces and fighting open new doors." So when you saw Kocharyan's reaction and Kocharyan's press conference, what did you think?
He is 100% correct. In this case, he's 100% correct. What he's saying is, what you need to do is you need to unite the country and pull all of our resources together to defend the country and not to negotiate, long-term negative agreements when you're at your weakest point. You do not negotiate when you're at your weakest point. You try to delay important decisions until the time you strengthen yourselves, and that's what he's saying. He compared to Levon, he makes complete sense, and he's absolutely correct on the case that he was making on his analysis of the situation.
And he also made some interesting remarks with regards to Armenia's foreign relations. He spoke about Iran. He said that Armenia should invigorate its military relationship with Iran. And this is happening despite the current overtures, as you mentioned, coming from the West. What do you think about his comments about Iran and in general, people who say that the relationship with Iran should be invigorated?
Absolutely. Because I mean, the big issue with Iran is obviously the West, and specifically the United States. If you're making a pivot to the United States, Iran becomes a problematic country. However, when you're talking about immediate defense needs, no one can give us any lectures about who we deal with, unless they're willing to give us immediate alternatives. So if the United States says, do not buy military equipment from Iran, what are you going to give us instead? And do so immediately and without conditions. So I think he's absolutely correct, and whoever argues that is correct. I think the Iranian relationship is quite important, especially now that we know that the Russian security guarantees are non-existent. And we have to look at every option, and no one has any right to limit us. And if they want to limit us, they have to give us immediate options without preconditions. So, and I think the more we should not shy away from it, we should actually push the Iranian option, if for nothing else than to open up other doors for us.
And Kocharyan, who is seen as one of the more pro-Russian political figures in the country, also made comments on Russia and the CSTO. He basically said that it is unrealistic for Armenians to expect that Russia or the CSTO will help Armenia militarily. He also said that in terms of the member states of the CSTO, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, they all have better relations with Azerbaijan over Armenia. So what did you think about Kocharyan's comments with regards to Russia and the CSTO?
It's the weakest part of his press conference. It is the weakest part of his case. First of all, if we cannot expect Russia to act to its treaty commitments, what are they good for? For 30 years, we have joined this organization instead of EU, done this, not done that, based on their what they would say, what they would do. Well, now we know what they say they would do. They would do nothing if our security is threatened. So the problem with Kocharyan at this point is that the entire pro-Russian political position in Armenia has collapsed. It's not simply that he's not popular. It's the fact that no one believes, no one openly will be advocating for Russia because Russia is seen as a country that whose commitments are worth nothing, and is by many people believed to be in an alliance, a strategic alliance with Azerbaijan and Turkey against the democratic world and against Armenia. And we have to choose between these two sides whether we want to or not. So I think this, he doesn't want to admit the new reality. If he was to come to power, nothing will change because that relationship is a lot more important than his personal relationship with Putin. As far as the relationships with first of all, CSTO is a joke. It practically doesn't even exist. And whether Armenia has good relations with a whole group of trash canistans from Central Asia makes absolutely no strategic difference whatsoever. Azerbaijan can have good relations with Belarus and Kyrgyzstan. Good for them. That doesn't change anything. So his problem is that he's not willing to admit the new reality that his patron, the country that he's closest to, is actually indirectly or directly aligned with our enemies.
And finally, Eric, I want to talk a bit about some of the comments Pashinyan made in the government sitting this week. One of the ones that has got a lot of attention is when he told his cabinet that there have been cases where hundreds of millions of dollars have been paid for arms, but the supply commitments have not been met, and this includes our allied countries. Now, he didn't mention a country, but many believe he is talking about Russia. What do you think about this development?
He is talking about Russia. Because if you do the logical conclusion of the timeline he's talking about, we were only buying significant weapons from them. The Americans were not an option then. The West was not an option. So he's obviously clearly talking about Russia. Obviously, this is about weapons purchases that haven't been delivered, either because of limitations having to do with the war or pressure or the tilt that Russia has done towards the Aliyev regime. So it's one of those two things. But it's that's what he's essentially referring to, except he just can't name the country.
During the same cabinet sitting, Pashinyan also announced that Armenia's military budget will increase by 50%, a significant number. At the same time, he's saying consistently that his government is committed to the peace agenda and that difficult decisions must be made. So what do you think of these two approaches that are kind of happening at the same time?
Well, you know, he also said that, you know, education and military reform are the two biggest agendas of the country. So he's absolutely correct, and is actually showing good momentum on that side towards understanding that security moment, which is way overdue. Obviously, the increase in spending, especially now that we have the resources for it, is very good. That's a good sign. But I think when it comes to talking about peace, he's really lost the country. This is a man who has very good political instincts, but the problem is not that people don't want peace. People want peace. Everybody wants peace. The problem is that nobody believes in peace. What people are looking for is a commander-in-chief. They're looking for a country, someone that can show a vision of that I can say no, that we can get stronger, that we can take back what we have lost. For example, in Armenia proper over the last couple of weeks. He needs to talk in a forceful language, in a strong language, affirmative language, and rally people around him and be a leader. People are looking for a wartime leader. And every time you talk about peace that people don't believe, you're essentially tightening the noose around your neck politically. Because the next time, and then it's inevitable, the next Aliyev attack is not going to bring out 30,000 people in the street. It's going to bring 200,000 people in the street. At this point, the Prime Minister has only one option. You become a wartime leader and rally the country and focus the entire focus of the state, the resources of the country, towards protecting it, or you will be seen as a weak appeaser who will be replaced by someone who is willing to be far stronger in defending the interests of the country.
Well, Eric, insightful as always. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on CivilNet.